software development manager with 10 years of experience in software development, Brasher will perform the content warming module demo for us. The content warming module lets you hide some content behind the warning so that users can decide if they want to view it or not. In this session, you will get to see in the action and take a look at the code that makes it happen.
Welcome back after lunch. I hope everyone's not too sleepy after eating. I was told one time in a public speaking class that I was monotone and boring, so I'll try to make this one a little more interesting. My name is Brasher. My pronouns are she, her. And I work as the Application Development Manager at the Personnel Board of Jefferson County and Birmingham, Alabama, here in the U.S. I've been there for about 8 years and have done web development for about 10 years. Most of that has been in .NET and .NET Core ever since it came out. Feel free to follow me on or connect with me on LinkedIn, and there's also a link to my LinkedIn on my website, drewbrasher.com. So what I want to go over today is start with my Orchard Core journey, kind of how I got started using Orchard Core, what are content warnings, and then why I wanted to make this module. And then we'll go through showing how to use the module to add content warnings to some of your content. And then we'll take a look at the code and have some time for questions. So my journey with Orchard Core kind of started back before I knew about Orchard Core. I was looking for a CMS. And since I loved using .NET, and .NET Core had just come out not too long before, I was wanting something in .NET Core. But it was pretty early on after the release of .NET Core, so I couldn't find anything. I think I did run across Orchard, but since I was looking specifically for .NET Core, I didn't really look into it much. I just decided to build my own. I mean, how hard can that be? But you can see it wasn't that great looking, but it functioned for what I needed. It was just my personal site, which was kind of like a business card, an online business card. Not that pretty. So I found out about Orchard Core, and I started going through the Dojo course. I went all the way through that. If you're new to Orchard Core, I definitely recommend that you go through the Dojo course and follow along, and doing the steps for everything. It's a really helpful tool for learning Orchard Core. I've even gone back and rewatched some because, to be honest, the first time I went all the way through it, I don't think I really grasped half of it. So shapes was something that I was looking forward to today, talk about shapes, because that's something I really had a hard time, and I do understand it a little bit better. So. And then, of course, the documentation has been helpful, and looking at the source code for both Orchard Core and the demo, the training demo. When I was writing this module, I would just search the source code for like short code and find places where the short code was used and get an idea of how I could implement a short code. And then, of course, the Orchard Core community, y'all have been extremely helpful, and I think that is one of the best things about Orchard Core is that the people in the Orchard Core community are just really eager to help new people. I would submit GitHub discussions if I had questions, and people would usually have an answer or report me to a place in the documentation or the code where I could find it. And then more recently, the Discord server, which if you haven't joined that, I would recommend you join the Discord server. So after learning about Orchard Core, I give my personal site an upgrade. It's a lot prettier now. I just used the basic blog site. I made a little bit of changes using the liquid templates, and then after that, at my job at the Personnel Board, we needed to build a system for some of our people to create this board packet, which is what all the information that our board members have to go over each month. And it includes like PDF documents and audio and video files and some description of the items. So I decided that Orchard Core would be a good way to implement that. So I started doing that, and it did. There was some learning curve to it, but even with having to learn all the stuff I had to learn, it still cut down the development time a lot, as opposed to if I had done it just in just pure .NET Core. So they add all the items, and the system creates an agenda for the meeting based on all those items, and then they can review the documents and the files that are uploaded right there on the web, on their iPads. And then most recently, I built this content warning module that I'm going to talk about today. So I really kind of feel a little out of place in the lineup of speakers. I'm pretty new to Orchard Core. That one application is and this module is all I've really done besides a blog that was, pretty basic, just using the out-of-the-box Orchard Core CMS. So, but the reason I wanted to come up here and give this talk was because I would like to bring more awareness to content warnings, and also show just how easy it is to do some cool stuff with Orchard Core, even for a beginner. And of course, I didn't want to pass up a free ticket to Orchard Harvest. So what are content warnings? So a content warning is when you hide some content that people might not want to see, and you give them a message about what content you're hiding, and then it allows them to choose whether to reveal the hidden content or not. This is useful for if you want to talk about a movie and some of the things you want to say might be a spoiler to people who haven't watched it, but it's also really helpful if you want to talk about something like a traumatic experience or talk about some traumatic thing, or if you want to post things that are explicit topics or images. It gives people who are viewing the content the option of whether they see it or not. There's some examples of other platforms that have content warnings. So for Discord, for example, you can use the double pipes to add a content warning around some content, and it just blacks it out until whoever you send the message to selects that and unhides it. Also, Mastodon has a content warning feature where you can select a content warning and put in the message you want to display, and it shows the message with a show more. So that's just some examples of content warnings in some of the other platforms. The reason I wanted to make this module was that I think content warnings are an important part of any content-driven platform, and Orchard Core CMS is all about content, so I thought it would be useful to have. One reason I think that content warnings are important is because it gives people more control of their mental and emotional well-being. If they're not, if they have experienced some traumatic event, and maybe they have PTSD or something like that, they may not be in a place where it is healthy for them to read certain things at that time, and then they can see that warning and they can choose whether or not they want to see it or not. And then another reason was I wanted to add this, have the option to add warnings to things on my personal blog. I don't blog a lot, but I wanted to be able to have that option. And also, I wanted to get some more experience writing a specific module that is really reusable. My work in Orchard Core before was mostly done in theme, even though looking back on it now, a lot of it probably should have been a module. I kind of didn't know what I was doing. So I did a lot of things that probably could have been done a better way when I was building that core packet system, but it still works very, very well. But I would probably do a little bit of things different. But this kind of gave me some experience of building like a really specific use module that can be reused. So when I was planning this module, I started a discussion on GitHub, like I mentioned before, and got some really helpful feedback from the community, and then kind of pointing me in places in the source code where things were used that I might be able to use to implement this. And I decided to implement it with a short code for doing inline content warnings, and then also a content part for putting a content warning on an entire content item. So I also did some research on how other content platforms handle content warnings. And while doing that, I ran across a blog post by Aaron Gustafson, who I believe works at Microsoft. And they had made some JavaScript as a kind of a proof of concept of how browsers could implement a content warning natively. And it did exactly what I was looking for, and it looked like it would be pretty easy to integrate into Orchard Core. And one of the things that I really was thinking about and not sure how to handle was how to make sure that the content warnings worked with screen readers. And Aaron's code did take that into account and worked with screen readers. And so that's why I decided to use that JavaScript and just implement it as the Orchard Core module. So what are screen readers and why is accessibility important? So a screen reader is an assistive technology that allows visually impaired to, it reads the text out loud and so that they can hear what's on the screen. Operating systems like Windows and Mac both have built-in features you can turn on for that. There's also other software that you can download. Some of it I think there's a few for free, some of them you have to pay, but there's JAWS and NVDA that are more full-featured screen readers. And the reason I think that that's important is because I think people of all abilities should have had the same access to resources and information. And as software developers, it's our responsibility to make sure that the things that we build are accessible to everybody. So accessibility really needs to be part of the whole life cycle of software development and not an afterthought. So to add a content warning to some content in your site using this module, and I'll go through this in some code to see it. You just have to install the NuGet package drewbrasher.orchardcore.contentwarning, and then enable the feature, the content warning feature. And then once you do that, the shortcode is available anywhere where shortcodes are used in Orchard Core. So like the HTML body and the Markdown body, it will show up in those. If you want to put a content warning around a whole content item, then you just need to add the content warning part to that content type, and then that will add the option to put a content warning around any item of that type. So let's take a look at how to add this to an existing site. So this is just a plain Orchard Core CMS site that I've created with the Orchard Core templates. And I haven't done anything else except just create the create the site. So we'll just go to the NuGet Package Manager. And we'll just install the NuGet package. And you can see that it's been installed. So we'll go ahead and run that. And this is, we have just a blog site set up with a couple of blog posts. You can look at this and there's no movie spoiler. I use this because, well, The Matrix is my favorite movie, and also it's 25 years old, and this really isn't even a spoiler, so. I wanted to use something that wouldn't actually be a spoiler or anything that if somebody hadn't seen the movie I was using. So we'll just go to the admin side. And we need to go to configuration and features, and could search for warning and enable the content warning. Now I can go to this blog post and edit it. I'll take out this, I'll just cut this out. And now if you click on the shortcodes button in the menu, now the content warning shortcode is available. You could also just type it directly in, and it's just content_warning. Or you can, if you're typing it out, you can just use the shorthand CW instead. I'll just go ahead and add it from here. I'll go here and paste in that content. And the parameter that you pass in the single quotes is the warning message that you want displayed to the users. So we'll say it's a spoiler for The Matrix. I'll just publish that. And now if we go over here and refresh, we've got a spoiler warning, and then if I want, I can click on it and it shows the content. If I want to re-hide it for any reason, I can just click that button and re-hide it. And so that is all there is to adding a content warning to some inline content in a HTML or Markdown body with the shortcode. Now if I wanted to put a warning around the entire content item, so like a whole blog post, then I need to go to content definitions, content types. I'll select the content type I want to add, to be able to add warnings to. So I'm going to select blog post and go to add parts. And I'm going to select the content warning part. Save that. And then save the content definition. And we'll go back and take a look at this blog post. And now at the bottom, there's a checkbox to show a warning. And you can put a message in there that will display. Go ahead and publish that. We go back and take a look at this one. Now there's the whole item is surrounded by a content warning, and you can click to display it and click to re-hide it, just like with the shortcode. So that is all there is to adding it to your site and using it. So let's take a look at some of the code to see how easy this was to do in Orchard Core. So the three parts are JavaScript, the shortcode, and the content part. So the JavaScript, like I mentioned, I copied and modified with permission from Aaron Gustafsson. And it creates a custom content warning element that has the same size as the original content, with a button that has the content warning text as the text of the button. And then it moves the original content to the shadow DOM, which is what makes it work, which is what hides it from the user and also makes it to where screen readers don't see it. Then it puts the content warning element in its place. Then when you click the button that has the content warning on it, it swaps those back and puts your original content there, and it uses the alert role to alert screen readers that there's new content that it should read. So the main changes that I made to the JavaScript were I changed the attribute that we're selecting on, because Aaron had used this content warning attribute because this was kind of a proof of concept of how browsers could implement it in the future, which I hope they do. But to make it valid with the current HTML standards, I changed it to a data-content-warning attribute, so that anything with that attribute gets changed into a content warning. The other modification I made was adding the handler to rehide, so that it could have a rehide button, so that just in case someone maybe accidentally clicks to unhide it, or maybe they unhide it and then decide they don't want to see it, they can rehide it. So for the shortcode, I needed to register the JavaScript and some CSS. I did that with a resource manager. And then created a content warning shortcode provider that set the HTML of the shortcode. And what it did was to get the warning from the parameter of the shortcode, and then it creates a span with that data content warning attribute, and the value of the attribute is the warning message that gets passed in. It also adds the button to rehide, and I used the font awesome / for the button, since Orchard Core already uses font awesome. And then it puts the content that is inside the shortcode inside that span with the data content warning attribute. The next thing I had to do was describe the shortcode and add the shortcode provider. So, and this is where you set all the information that gets displayed in that menu that pops up when you click the shortcode icon on the toolbar of like the Markdown editor or the HTML body editor. And it just gives a default value of what gets put in there when you click add, and also some hint and usage, and you can set the category. Another thing I had to do was to add that data content warning attribute to the allow list, so that when the Markdown body gets sanitized, it won't strip out that attribute, because the data attributes get stripped out by default. And that was it for the shortcode. And then for the content warning part, I just needed to register the same JavaScript and CSS, and then added a wrapper around the content item. And this is something that I didn't know you could do until I started researching how to do this, and someone pointed me to the code that showed how Forms does it, how the Forms module does this. So I kind of based some of this on what was in the Forms module, but so you can, I thought it was really cool that you can have a content part that then affects how the whole content item displays by adding the wrapper around it. And so that's what this does. We get the shape and the part, and then we add a wrapper to the shape, and the wrapper, and pass in the name of the wrapper view. And this is set up to where you can override it if you had a certain content type that you want to override the wrapper view for. And then the view HTML is kind of like the shortcode, except this one has a div, that same content warning attribute, and it gets the message off of the part where you set it in the editor. And then it adds that same button, and then it renders the child content just like it would normally. So it just takes all the content, renders it as it normally would, but it's inside a div with that content warning attribute and with a button to rehide. And that was all that it took to take this JavaScript and add and make it into a content warning module. And if you want to, you can check out my blog post about the warning module at this URL, or QR code will take you there, but I can take any questions.
How easily would it be to modify your code to maybe take a variable like a person's age and just basically could you use this to restrict content and not have a warning, just simply gray it all out based on either age, say if there's age appropriate information but you don't want to or the fact that you wanted to hide something behind a paywall.
Yeah, I think that could probably be pretty easily added. I guess it depends on where the age is going to come from. Would that be in the user profile or something maybe? So I do think that you could possibly add another another property to the content part, or also another parameter to the shortcode that would take an age limit and go by that. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And what made you make this? Was there a business need or anything like that, or was this personal?
It was more personal, I guess. In my job, I don't really post a lot of content, I guess, and there's not really too much need for it there. But it's just something that I saw a lot on some social platforms like Mastodon and Discord, and thought that it would be good for a CMS to have that feature as well. And especially thinking about blog posts, it would be good to be able to add content warnings to things you're going to post about, in case you might want to post about something but might be worried about how it might affect some people. This lets you post what you want to post and lets your users, or people who are reading your stuff, decide if they want to see it or not. So.
I think one case I've seen it used is when coders post code in the blog, but you don't want to take up a lot of space, so you just hide the whole thing and you just click when somebody wants to see it, and then it just kind of opens it up.
Yeah.
Keeps the blog really tight.
I was just thinking in terms of restriction.
Right.
I want to nail something down and not keep it. You keep it from the person for a specific reason. But yeah.
So technically, when it comes to screen readers and accessibility, what happens is that content that is hidden, is it still in the HTML, only hidden visually, or is it pulled when you click a button? I didn't quite catch that.
It is moved to the shadow DOM,
Okay.
which and so it's not accessible to the screen readers and doesn't show up like if you were to select all on the page, like it doesn't. It's basically not there visibly. So,
Okay, but it's not something that a reader would read, that the screen reader would read.
Right,
Okay.
and I tested it out, and so the screen reader reads the content warning, and then if you click the button to hide it, then it reads the content.
Okay, great. And that shadow DOM, that's HTML5 thing with the. How does that work?
I'm not 100% sure. I actually learned about that while I was making this module, so I don't know a lot about it.
Yeah, that's intriguing. I have to check that out. Thanks.
Okay.
So if there isn't any other question, then we will have a 5-minute break before the panel discussion. Because of the technical difficulties, I have to make this break a little bit shorter. So see you back then here.